Now, here's the thing that he mentioned to me that was just something that wasn't even on my radar. He said, well, when we were doing in-house, I had about like 4 people here, doing all the, like the billing manager and the people helping, the posting, whatever. But then when I outsource, like I have like many people that they're like, the outsource company is responsible for putting a team. And if someone leaves, they just get another person. And it's like, I don't have to worry about retraining anybody. As soon as they leave, they train them, they get them up, they plug another person in. It's awesome. But what I didn't realize when I outsourced my billing is that they have data. They have data. They know exactly how to fix claims or adjust. They see so many claims. They see so many errors that occur. They know exactly how to fix them. Also, they know what's trending and what to be aware of. So they just have this model of the world. A good billing company has this model of the world of what good looks like. So I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so in this video, what we're going to do is talk about the benefits, the pros, the cons of outsourcing or keeping your billing in-house. Now, before we get into that, I just wanted to say a lot of times when owners reach out and they say, hey, should I outsource my billing or should I keep it in-house? A lot of times they're coming from survival mode. And what I mean by that is they're frustrated with their current billing situation. They're outsourcing and maybe they're not doing what they need to do, so they want to bring it in-house. And then we have people that are doing in-house billing and they want to outsource it because they are frustrated themselves. So I wanted to shoot this video, and I'm going to kind of jam out on my board here for a second. And I wanted to shoot this video to give you guys enough information to make a decision. And hopefully it gives you enough information to make a decision before you get frustrated. I know that I had about like 4 or 5 different billing companies that we worked with. And it was just one of those things that like, you're like, this is it. These are the ones that are going to save us. And then you go with them and it's just not what you need it to be. And then you switch and then you go with somebody else. And then maybe that was even worse than what you had before, so on and so forth. So I want to walk you guys through this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about cost first, because I think a lot of people don't realize that the cost is kind of irrelevant. So it really doesn't, and I'll tell you what exactly is relevant in a couple minutes here, but I want to go over just understanding that there really isn't that big of a cost gap to this thing, but there's something else here in play. So let's just look at $1 million in revenue for a single location. Let's say it's a single location that's doing $1 million in revenue. And if you were to outsource your billing, and usually outsourced billing would run anywhere between like 4%, 4.5%, all the way up to like 6% of your total collections. So now some people, when they look at cost, and I would highly recommend this, when they look at the 4.5 or 6%, you want to ask them, is that total or is that just the insurance portion? Okay. It matters a lot, because if we're looking at this thing and this is your total collection, $1 million, well, then they're going to take about $45,000 for the year, and then this company is going to take about $60,000. Well, if it was just the insurance portion, which a lot of in-network clinics usually run around 70% of the revenue is just basic through insurance, and then 30% of the revenue is over-the-counter collections for patients. So there's about 30% of your money here that might not have to be collected from the billing company. So what I mean by that is that if you take 45 or 60, and we're kind of looking at 30% here, well, that's about 18 grand that you could save by just doing the insurance portion versus the total collection. So that might be something for you guys to look at, is that, is this going to be total collection, which is going to be 60K, or is this just going to be the insurance portion, which is like 42K? So you guys get the idea here. Big question that I would always ask is this total collection or is this just the insurance side of things? So that's number one. Number two, when we look at like outsourcing, well, let's say, so we got $1 million clinic here and we're asking if it's total versus insurance. Always ask if it's just the insurance collection and you get to keep the patient responsibility, right? We had one billing company that took our patient responsibility and insurance and any add-on services. So it's the weirdest thing. I didn't know this was a thing, but they're just like, hey, if you're charging dry needling and you're putting it in the system, we get a percentage of that. I'm like, why? Like anyways, crooks. So when we're looking over here, we got $1 million clinic. Usually this would run about like $42,000 for the year in order for us to outsource our billing. Okay. Now, the other question then is like, well, what does it cost for in-network? Well, I could argue that you're going to need to pay a billing manager, someone who has a lot of experience. And $1 million, you're looking at about like 4 providers, right? So that's 4 providers that are treating patients, give or take. And let's just say they're doing about 60 slots a week. So when you look at this, 6, 12, 18, 24, that's 240 slots of availability. And let's say they're about 86% efficient for the clinic, doing around like 200 to 210 visit arrivals for the week. So that puts them about 800 claims for the month. Okay, so for 800 claims to be processed through the month, this billing manager needs to be able to process around 800 claims. Okay, now with that being said, are they able to do that by themselves, right? So that you have $42,000 to pay this person, or are they going to need a helper, which most of them do? Okay, so we have 42, because I'm trying to compare apples and oranges here on cost. So if we have $1 million location, it's going to cost us about $42,000 to outsource, and then in-house you have to have a billing manager, and then also probably like a billing specialist or like a support person, and that $42,000 could go quick, because even if you're paying like $35K for the main person, and then which is kind of low if you ask me for someone who's running your billing, and then if you do about like $10K for someone to come in and do like 10 hours a week kind of job, well, again, that's the setup. Okay, so ideally what's going to happen here is that most in-network for 800 claims, you're probably going to need to be around 2 full-time people to be able to do this kind of volume. Okay, now some people have one biller, but I usually hear right around like that third or fourth provider, they start to run into cash flow issues. And usually it's because we have like one biller could do about 400 claims a month by themselves. And then they usually need another biller to come in to help with the other mop up. So, and we'll talk about the revenue cycle here in a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. If you were going to compare apples to apples, and this is going to run us around 42K here for outsourcing our billing. In-house billing is going to run us around, if we have 42K to spend, usually it's about a 1.25 FTE or maybe even a 1.5 FTE to do your billing. Okay. Now the question then becomes, when we're looking at $1 million location, isn't necessarily going to be the cost factor. Okay. We know it's going to cost us anywhere between like $45,000 to $60,000 a month if we're going to outsource our billing or if we're going to keep it in-house. Now the question here becomes, which one is more efficient? Okay. Like that's all we're trying to ask here. So the biggest thing when it comes to like outsourcing your billing, or if it comes to like in-house billing, which one is going to be more efficient? Like that's all that matters. And my definition of efficiency is that when we have 800 claims being sent out, how many of those are approved, right? So how many of those are approved during the first submission, okay? This is going to be known as your first time pass rate, okay? It's a really awesome metric for you guys to be looking at inside of your clinics, because the first time pass rate, what that tells you is that out of 800 claims on $1 million location, how many of those were actually approved the first time? And ideally, we want to get as close to 95, greater than 95% as possible. Because if you look at it like this, let's just say, we'll do simple math here and say 1,000 claims. Let's say you're doing 1,000 claims. Well, if you have a 60% first time pass rate, well, that means that you have 400 claims that were denied and you have 600 claims that were approved. Okay. So now those billers, that 1.25 FTEs or whatever, needs to be able to work 400 denied claims, which is insane. Okay. But then if we look at 80% first time pass rate, well, now it gets down to 200. So you just cut it in half and your approvals are 8. But if you were at 97% first time pass rate, well, now all of a sudden we just have basically 30 claims here and 970 claims that were approved over here. So that's why this metric is so powerful, because we want to know how many claims were approved the first time around. So then when we go to revenue cycle, all it is like, hey, that was approved and now it just needs to get paid and then it just needs to get posted. Like that's the billing process. However, if we sit there and we're like, no, it was denied. Well, now we need to have a feedback loop with the front office. Okay. And what we have to do here, front office and your providers, that feedback loop basically is just like, hey, this is why we got denied and this is what we need to do to fix it. And then we resubmit the claim and then hopefully it gets approved and then gets paid and then it gets posted. But a lot of times what happens here is that these denials just keep stocking up and stocking up and stocking up. And then what happens here is now instead of working 800 claims a month, now they're working 100 claims a month plus the denials. And that's where we start to run into efficiency issues. They just can't keep up. So a lot of times what we have to understand is that like how efficient can we be when it comes to in-house versus outsourced, okay? Now, the other thing that I want to leave you guys with here as we're talking through this video is that we had, it was kind of interesting. We had an individual that he had 5 locations and they were doing like over like $3 million in revenue with his 5 locations. And when we looked at his kind of his expense sheet, we started to look, he was running around like $20,000 to about $23,000 a month just to pay his in-house billing company. Now, well, I say a company, but in-house billing department. And when we looked at it, we're like, why are you paying so much here, right? So he had about like $3 million in revenue, and then per month, right? So if you look at that, you know, that let's just say $240K a year is what they were spending in their billing cost. Now, ideally, when we're looking at this thing, it's just like, well, if you were to outsource your billing, which they ended up doing, they ended up outsourcing their billing, and they were only paying now about 10 grand a month for someone that was doing about 4%. Because once you do all these claims, you could actually negotiate claim, like this is, could get lower because you could negotiate that because you have more volume, more claims being processed. So they basically cut their bill down from 20 to 23K a month down to $10,000 just from going from in-house to outsourced. Now, here's the thing that he mentioned to me that was just something that wasn't even on my radar. He said, well, when we were doing in-house, you know, I had about like 4 people here, you know, doing all the, like the billing manager and the people helping, the posting, whatever. But then when I outsource, like I have like many people that they're like, the outsource company is responsible for putting a team. And if someone leaves, they just get another person. And it's like, I don't have to worry about retraining anybody. As soon as they leave, they train them, they get them up, they plug another person in. It's awesome. But what I didn't realize when I outsourced my billing is that they have data. They have data. They know exactly how to fix claims or adjust. They see so many claims. They see so many errors that occur. They know exactly how to fix them. Also, they know what's trending and what to be aware of. So they just had this model of the world. A good billing company has this model of the world of what good looks like. So I thought that was really interesting. A lot of times we try to do things in-house, and then eventually what happens is that we get this taken away because there's this data, there's this compliance, there's this different hands at, that's working with us or against us here that most people are not aware of. Now, this isn't a video to knock in-house billing, but at the same time, when you're an owner just starting and you hire your first admin here, and then eventually you hire your first PT, and then you're going to get a second PT and a second admin in there, and then eventually you're going to get a third PT and a fourth PT, and eventually get out of treatment. Well, you can't really manage your billing the way that you want until you're out of treatment. So when you're inside $1 million location, right, we have to trust that somebody, and we outsource to somebody, that they can work our bills. So then these people here, the first and second admin, could work your leads more and your sales more, right? And some of that stuff. And a lot of billing companies also offer insurance verifications and different things like that. So it's like, do we want our admins to be focused on filling our schedules, or do we want our admins to be focusing on billing? Okay. So that's just one thing. And then the last thing I'll leave you with, I'll give you one more nugget. So over-the-counter collections. If you want to know if your team is billing properly or collecting over-the-counter properly, then what you want to do is look at your patient statements for the month. And if those patient statements are over $200, then that just means we have an inefficiency when it comes to collecting money at the front office. Because a lot of patient, at least the patient portion, should be collected at the time of service. So look at all your patient statements that you're sending out for the month. And if you guys are doing a good job of over-the-counter collections, then that patient portion will be less than $200 each month. If it's like $500, $600, $800, $1,000, couple $1,000, we are leaving a lot of money, a lot of cash flow on the table. And it's really, really easy to collect money during time of service. And it's a lot harder when that person is 6 months after care. Okay. So hopefully this video kind of opened you up a little bit to the difference between in-house and outsourced billing. We were always outsourced. We never really went in-house. And eventually what happened is we were outsourcing, but we still had to bring in someone in-house anyways, just to kind of manage the system. And then once you guys get over $1 million clinic, you will have somebody in there that's kind of like a front office and billing kind of bridge, where they're the ones that are handling like the patient statements and, patient billing concerns, and they're coordinating, making sure the billing company is doing what they need to do. So you will eventually hire like an in-house billing manager to manage your outsourced billing team. And then people get a little frustrated by that because they're like, well, I'm outsourcing. Why should I have someone in-house? But if you want maximum efficiency, what happens, like, as soon as you get to like 2-3 locations, you'll have outsourced billing, but then you'll also have like a billing manager, because now you have enough revenue coming in to support this, who's just managing that outsourced system. Because I like to look at outsourced billing as just an extension to my business, not that I'm completely outsourcing. Okay. So hopefully this video is beneficial. Remember, this all ties back into your cash flow. So get the system dialed in.